Bethesda Game Studios really is on a roll with Fallout 76. The game has reached over 20 million players in total, Skyline Valley is one of the best expansions the game has ever seen, and come next year, we'll even be able to play as ghouls, which is something that Fallout fans have been wanting for many years. Now, Jez Corden of Windows Central has interviewed BGS about the future of the game, and many important topics were discussed, including modding, crossplay, nuclear winter, and more. The interview is linked in the description below, but in today's video, I'm going to be breaking it down further. Let's get right into it. First up, Bethesda Game Studios discussed Skyline Valley, which should be live by the time this video goes up. I've spoken about how great Skyline Valley is in my review of the PTS version, especially because it provides us what we've been asking for a while, a map expansion of Appalachia. Specifically, you'll get to explore the Shenandoah National Park, in addition to experiencing a new storyline, side quests, events, campsites, and rewards. Not only is it the first time that Fallout 76 has ever seen a map expansion, but in the interview, BGS pledged to add even more content to this area in the future. It's exciting to hear that they're absolutely not done with the Skyline Valley region, and especially given the positive reception to this update, I would not be surprised at all if more map expansions were on the horizon. Secondly, Jez then asked Bethesda Game Studios about the topic of modding. If you remember, long ago, Todd Howard himself revealed that Fallout 76 would eventually be getting mod support. Specifically, in an interview with Jeff Keighley back in June 2018, prior to the launch of the game, Todd Howard stated that, quote, "We love mods, and so we are 100% committed to doing that in 76 as well. We will not be able to do that at launch though. Our goal for launch, this is really new for us, is have a well-running, robust service, and then some period later, we're currently still designing what that service looks like, you'll be able to have your own private world and be able to mod it and do all of that. With our games, that's where the long-term life of them really is. That is trickier when you get into an online world, but we're definitely committed to that. It just won't be at launch." However, now 6 years later, we of course still haven't received official mod support for Fallout 76, and BGS have largely remained silent on the matter. Well, thanks to Jez Corden, we have a bit more clarity about whether the game will ever get official mod support. After asking whether we could eventually see mod support for Fallout 76, this is what Bethesda Game Studios had to say. "We've never really pushed back on players who add UI mods and things like that, but any other mods where you would expect to have like a script extender that you often need for single player games, that won't happen with Fallout 76. Being online, we have to protect the integrity of the game to make sure the players aren't injecting code and destroying the balance of the game in some way, shape or form." Taking public teams for example, we wanted to make sure that players' mods weren't affected by some of those new features that came in. Even though we don't officially support mods, we're still aware of mods that players are using for UI things. So ultimately, what we gave them with the loadout system and the job board, they had already kind of started to appear in the modding community. They had a way for them to be able to select different loadouts and actually change the parts on the fly. But we kind of gave them that in the game, which is better supported. We did this because if we do any updates, it kind of guarantees that the features will continue to work. But yeah, we don't officially support mods for a lot of different reasons. We try not to break the UI mods, but sometimes it's necessary. So there is your answer. It is definitely looking like Fallout 76 will never be getting official mod support, and I have mixed emotions about this. First, even though Todd himself said that the game would get mod support one day, I'm not surprised that it won't anymore. As mentioned, they were so silent on the matter that I had already long felt that they had moved on from the idea. Second of all, even though I'm a little sad that Fallout 76 will never be properly moddable, given the huge potential it would have, I totally get it. Yes, 76 is mostly a PvE game, but there is a very good argument that BGS need to protect the integrity of the game and ensure that people using mods don't ruin the experience for other players who don't use mods, especially when it comes to public events and boss battles where players are interacting with each other. It wouldn't be fair for people to use broken and overpowered mods that ruin other players' enjoyment. The only way that mods would avoid those difficulties nowadays is if BGS could somehow restrict mods to just private servers or allow people to play the game completely offline so that they can mod it to their heart's content. And I thought at one stage this could be the plan, where BGS eventually wound down support for the game, allowed it to be played offline for game preservation purposes, released official modding tools for players to have their fun, and let the game ride off into the sunset. However, I don't know if it's possible to restrict modding to just private worlds and offline servers if people have the official tools to completely mod the game. Public worlds might still be at risk there. Plus, because 76 is not losing any momentum when it comes to popularity, in fact quite the opposite with player counts increasing, it looks like BGS have other plans for content and the game will likely be supported for many years to come. Maybe an offline mode and modding will happen one day if players are vocal enough, but for now, we have our answer. Third, BGS were briefly asked about whether we could see more expeditions in the future, perhaps to other fan favourite locations like the Capital Wasteland. Though their response was brief here, they said, quote, "It's always a possibility for sure." I'm very curious if BGS actually want to do more expeditions. Though Atlantic City was better received than the Pit, and BGS said the content was successful for them, it does feel like players are generally preferring proper map expansions to Appalachia as opposed to expeditions in separate locations. Their answer isn't ruling it out completely, and it would be great to see some locations from Fallout 3 brought to life again in 76 as expeditions, but my guess is that they're leaning more towards map expansions, which I actually prefer. Fourth, as I covered in a previous video, BGS currently has no major plans to tie Fallout 76 into the Fallout TV show. They again stress that nothing is off the table, but they're viewing the TV show and 76 as separate things. And I completely understand this. Not only would it prove to be logistically difficult to work with Prime Video and Kilter Films to coordinate content and storylines in the games to the show, but they're also set in completely different timelines and locations in the Fallout universe. Lore-wise, this would be hard to pull off successfully, and it definitely would be easier for them to treat both products as separate. Fifth, BGS tackled the question of combat and weapon damage. As veterans of the game would know, this has been a long-standing and debated topic, especially ever since BGS changed how weapon damage was calculated and how enemies were scaled years ago. The new reveal of the playable ghoul character has brought this discussion to the forefront, but players generally also still believe that the bloodied playstyle is too overpowered and that the game needs other builds to be much more viable and better compete with bloodied. So on this topic, this is what BGS had to say. There are several legacy systems that need some love. We have combat rebalancing to do, which is also part of this new update, and even screens like the workshop menu have become overloaded and hard to navigate. So we'll continue to explore changes to things like this going forward. Our approach involves constantly looking at weapon/armor/power armor and mods balancing, and we'll continue efforts to bring many of the underpowered items in line as best as we can with the others. We really want to see a variety of builds, loadouts and playstyles, and we don't ever want to force players down a limited number of paths because they're the only viable ones. So it is clear this is why Bethesda Game Studios is ensuring that the new ghoul character will not work with bloodied. They really want to ensure that players aren't forced down towards a limited number of playstyles, i.e. a bloodied build, and a new ghoul build or class would be a great and fresh way to do that. Ghouls have already been announced to be receiving their own unique perk cards and other benefits, like not taking radiation damage and walking through nuke zones, and this is BGS's opportunity to really create another viable build. I've spoken at length about this topic already, both for and against ghoul working with bloodied, but I totally understand where they're coming from, and I also empathize with non-bloodied players who have been wanting a bit of love with their full health builds for a very long time. So if BGS can get the balance right and make ghoul characters powerful, in addition to making other necessary changes to weapon and combat imbalances, then the future does look bright. Also, speaking of legacy systems, BGS, please update the ammo converter. Years later, it is still a pain to use. Number 6, Jez Corden asked BGS about both crossplay and cross saves or cross progression. Phil Spencer himself has been very vocal about wanting these features to be in all of Xbox's games, including Fallout 76. So, will they ever be implemented? Well, this is what they had to say. Quote, anything is possible. However, for 76, this is a very heavy technical lift because you're talking about having to adjust for different platform accounts, add-in purchases, platform-specific social systems, and other entitlements, and we feel the time/effort is best spent on content. I won't ever say it's off the table, but this is one of those features that is very complex to add later. So this answer isn't really giving me much confidence that cross saves and crossplay will be coming to 76 anytime soon, which is a shame. Especially for crossplay, it would be amazing to be able to play Fallout 76 with anybody, no matter what platform they're on. That would hugely open up the playing populace and really ensure that servers always feel full, especially when one day the game's player counts naturally start to decrease. That happens with almost every game after all, and crossplay would really help with that transition. Cross saves and cross progression would also be an awesome addition to the game as well. Players especially have been asking about transferring their console characters and save files to PC for a very long time, and vice versa, and introducing this ability to do so seamlessly would be hugely appreciated. However, I do appreciate the realities of these features being a huge technical lift for BGS. The game's engine is a bit old now, and quite a mishmash of code, and as I've also discussed in several videos in the past, even with Double 11 involved, 76 still has a relatively small team working on the game. As a result, they have to make hard choices about where they spend their time, and ultimately, content is key and the most important thing. If they simply don't have the resources to make it happen, then it's understandable. Though if Phil Spencer wants it enough, perhaps he could give the team the resources, money, and stuff they need to make it happen. Let's see. 7th, BGS was asked about whether Fallout First private servers would ever become always online, like with Minecraft Realms, where players can host servers and not always need to be online for others to join and play the game. Unfortunately, their answer was pretty short and brief about this one. Always online is not something they've discussed in depth, and there are no plans right now to add it to the game. Again, it's a shame, but there are probably bigger fish to fry for 76. Number 8, Jez Corden asked about whether Nuclear Winter would ever be brought back to the game. The removal of Nuclear Winter from Fallout 76 has long been a contentious decision, with many players loving the PvP mode and missing its presence in the game. I've lost count as to how many Reddit threads and change.org petitions I've seen asking BGS to bring back Nuclear Winter. And again, it's a topic they've remained pretty silent on. Well, we now have an official answer, and this is what they had to say. Quote, "It's not 100% off the table, but the engagement is much higher on the other game modes, and we went through an extensive sunsetting exercise to get all the rewards moved over to adventure mode. It's currently not on the roadmap to bring back." From my perspective, this answer feels as close to no as possible, and I don't believe we'll ever see Nuclear Winter return to the game. Now, I personally was definitely sad that the mode was removed from Fallout 76. It was a lot of fun, I had some great moments playing it with friends in the community, and it had so much untapped potential, especially if BGS did put more effort into supporting it with new maps and content. Plus, it was also one of those modes that just added further depth to Fallout 76. Sometimes you just don't feel like playing adventure mode, and Nuclear Winter was a nice change of pace every now and again. And yes, for those reasons, I would like it to return. However, like with other topics discussed in this video, I do understand the decision. BGS again have a very small team working on 76, and if it's indeed true that Nuclear Winter had a small number of players compared to regular Fallout 76, which I do believe, then it made a lot of sense for them not wanting to dedicate any time supporting it and also removing the mode entirely. Now, some have argued that they could have just left Nuclear Winter in the game as it was fine as it was, but that is simply not true. Part of the reason for Nuclear Winter's demise is that they didn't support it enough with new content, so many players stopped playing it. Yes, that's of course on BGS themselves, and it caused a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it was still the reality. Like with any battle royale, Nuclear Winter lived or died off the new content added into the mode. If BGS left the mode in the game as is, they had to support it in some capacity. But if they had zero intentions to do this whatsoever, which clearly was the case by the end, then its removal was arguably necessary. This is especially the case when you consider how rife cheating was in Nuclear Winter. It did and would have required a lot of effort from BGS and their QA and support teams to both introduce a suitable anti-cheat and also constantly investigate and ban the many cheaters constantly cropping up. It honestly felt that every second game at least had a cheater who would use a clipping hack to mow everybody down, and that simply was not a fun experience. So if they decided to leave the mode in the game, that would also demand a commitment from them to vigorously address any widespread cheating. And if they couldn't do so, then it simply wouldn't be fair on any lingering players for them to simply leave the mode in the game. Again, like with content, that's on BGS, but it's the hard reality. Players to this day still argue the base game doesn't get enough content like with Skyline Valley, so clearly there are bigger fish to fry in Fallout 76. And if supporting Nuclear Winter undermined that in any way, then I understand, albeit regrettably so, why it never returns. And that is everything we know about the future of Fallout 76. If the game continues to get great content and map expansions like Skyline Valley, it definitely has a bright future ahead, though it was a little sad to hear about the news when it comes to modding. But let me know what you think in the comments below, and until next time, this has been the Lone Vault Wanderer. Please take care of yourselves, and would you kindly keep fighting the good fight.